Welcome to part 5 of this series on what the actual F we are. Today, I'll get to my biggest personal takeaway from this scientific, non-abstract research on us trying beings. The idea it trapped me with that has been my greatest liberation. Dwelling as long as I have on explaining the emergence of the simplest trying beings, you might think I'll never get to humans. I'm saying the emergence of trying beings is the hard part that most researchers skip. My aim here is to make the whole story relevant and resonant with your personal experience. At the end of the last video, I talked about how I'm like the Autogen. Like it, I'm a form that channels energy into work that regenerates the form that I am. By form, I mean the relatively likely and unlikely places you'll find matter, relative presences and absences. For example, a donut and its hole. My form isn't static like a donut. I'm what scientists call an attractor, matter in flux flowing through while sustaining a range of forms. A hurricane or a whirlpool, for example, not a solid static form like a donut. A whirlpool is the general likelinesses and unlikelinesses of matter in time and space sustained as long as there's water flowing through it. The word attractor implies that there's some magnet inside it, pulling it into its whirlpool form. I think a more accurate term is clusterflux. I'm a clusterflux, energy and matter moving through me and in the process maintaining the cluster flux I am. I'm a different kind of cluster flux from a whirlpool. It's doing nothing to maintain the cluster flux it is. It exists as a function of the matter and energy running through it. Trying beings like us are actively channeling matter and energy into the regeneration of the cluster fluxes we are. I'm the source of the limitation on what form I take. I keep myself within a viable range of cluster flux forms for as long as I can. At death, I'll no longer be doing that, and whatever matter and energy I had from my last meals will be free to take any form at the mercy of circumstances. Unlike the Autogen, I've got feelings and thoughts. I'm not just trying to keep my shit together. I really want to keep my shit together. When my heart finally breaks down, I'll be heartbroken, literally and figuratively. I have thoughts about what I am, too. Self-concepts, ideas, and self-idealizations. Autophobia is fear of self-knowledge. I have some of that. I think everyone does. But it doesn't mean we're devoid of self-concepts. For example, one of my self-concepts is that death is for losers and I'm an exception. It's ridiculous, but comforting, unrealistically hopeful, and therefore amusing. I wrote this song, I'm sure going to miss me when I'm gone, which teases at the tension between thinking of myself as an eternal soul and the reality that I'll die. The unfeeling, unthinking Autogen does none of that. It's a trying being struggling for its own existence. But it doesn't feel anything or think about anything. Lots of trying beings are like that. It's interesting how we deal with that difference. I have thoughts because I have language with which to think, conceptualize, and imagine. My thoughts play and prey upon my feelings. My autophobia limits my self-concept, biasing it toward personally hopeful malarkey about my eternal soul. It's surprising how few researchers acknowledge the obvious difference that language makes. They argue that all organisms communicate and we shouldn't think of ourselves as so exceptional. Others, mostly in the social sciences, talk like consciousness makes us completely different from other organisms, as if through conceptual insights we can simply decide to transcend our animal natures. Me, I see myself as a self-regenerative clusterflux that has accumulated atop my basic struggle for existence, both feelings and thoughts. It's the familiar intuition that distinguishes body, heart, and mind. Body is what I have in common with all trying beings, down to the Autogen, my unfelt, unthought struggle for existence. For example, regenerating 330 billion cells a day. Heart is my neuronal sensitivity, which I share in common with all animals. It's what researchers sometimes call yum and yuck, or hedonic tone, pleasure and pain. And then I have language, and with it, mind, or what some researchers think of as human consciousness. These aren't parallel independent dimensions of what I am. They're entangled, each influencing the other. I feel best when my body runs smoothly, my heart feels good, and my thoughts are confident. All systems go. But there's plenty that can make me feel worse. Insomnia can be physically debilitating and can cause me dark thoughts. That's my heart troubling body and mind. Dark thoughts can make me all queasy and prone to illness. That's my mind troubling my body and heart. And illness makes me feel awful, my mind troubled by dark thoughts. I don't just deal with cognitive dissonance, like when we have conflicting thoughts. I have emotional and body dissonance too. I think that's the nature of life. The closest we get to perfect harmony is checks and balances pitted against each other. Consciousness is the buzzword of the day for people gingerly trying to understand what we actually are. It's a very abstract term, defined variously. One popular definition is that it's self-awareness, though often treated like a couch potato, passively observing the couch potato it is. Another is that it's experience, or what researchers call qualia, the feeling of redness, for example. The philosopher David Chalmers proclaims that explaining the emergence of qualia, or experience, is philosophy's hard problem. If all we are is molecules in motion, how could qualia ever emerge? How could there ever be experience? I think that's the made harder problem. It's only hard if you haven't bothered to explain us from the ground up, trying beings emergent within nothing but physical chemistry. In this video, I'm skipping steps on how we ended up with hearts and minds. I'll get back to it in future videos. In this one, I'm going to explain how once you've got trying beings, they can accumulate other interpretive abilities. But first, as is my wont, a bit more Shermanizing to motivate your curiosity. Did I mention that I once formed a group called Toastmasters Anonymous for people like me who admit that we're addicted to giving speeches? Research on all of this stuff tends to go in circles because we're trying to interpret the nature of interpreters. So we step back, watch some matter in motion, and interpret it as trying to do something. We give the matter in motion a name that implies trying. For example, the DNA molecules are selfish genes because they look selfish to an outside observer. Then someone says, wait, DNA is just a molecule. A debate ensues, and the interpreter says it's just a figure of speech because really it's just molecules in motion. Selves are just a figment. Then someone says, but something must be added to molecules in motion that makes them come alive. They coin a new term, and the research cycle begins again. As a result, we alternate between two options. Panpsychism is the argument that everything is trying. Eliminativism is the argument that nothing is trying. You also get equivocation between them, like everything is sort of trying but not really. That's why explaining trying beings, starting with autogens, self-regenerators, is so important to me. The question isn't whether molecules in motion look to outside observers like they're trying beings. The question is whether a physical system is trying on its own behalf, trying because it's at risk of dying. And as I'll continue to show, it's why I find the autogen explanation so relevant to my own trying, because I'm at risk of dying. It's not just death that makes me anxious. With language, my mind can conceive of the whole of humankind, or life on Earth. I can identify with it in confusing ways. When I die, it won't be the end of the world, just the end of me. It's easy to get confused about that, especially these days. The way things are going, I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 50 years we get 3 cosmic wedgies that will pull our tender hearts up into our autophobic throats. Perhaps we'll witness the decline and fall of human civilization as we know it. Perhaps we'll have discovered trying beings elsewhere in the universe. And perhaps we'll finally have a fully plausible explanation for what the actual fuck we are and how we emerge within nothing but physical chemistry's relentless randoming. I take some comfort from that. I've been rooting for my species all life long. To me, the most fundamental meaning of life is to not end it, especially not ending human language-using life like ours. Not just because I'm rooting for my species, but because human language-using life is the only kind that can speculate about the whole ball of wax and us in it. I don't know how to sell that meaning to those who simply don't buy it. For example, those who treat life as a game whose only objects are to die with the most toys, having done the most damage. I mean, I don't get to claim that the universe or God is trying to keep life going. I assume that purposeful effort emerges with life's struggle for existence, which serves no original or ultimate universal purpose. If someone doesn't buy that the meaning of life is to not end it, I can't tell them the universe or God is trying to keep life going. I mean, I can in fiction, like this religion I made up for the fun of it. I'm heartbroken daily, though more at night, foreseeing the possible end of civilization as I know it. Still, I take some comfort from the explanation for life I'm offering here. Though I've been rooting for my kind, human and beyond that earthly life, I have a feel for life overall and a sense that we're not the only possible trying beings. Having a plausible proof of concept for how trying beings could ever emerge from chemistry gives me a sense that life will go on somewhere, even language-using life. I knew I was going to die. That gun was cocked for me at birth. I hoped I could count on the comfort of knowing that life and civilization would go on here. Well, even if it doesn't, through an explanation for how we emerged, I sense that life can go on somewhere in the universe. I feel lucky to have had the opportunity to spend my life's free moments trying to figure out what this all is. Not that my trying to figure it out matters to the universe, which isn't trying to do anything. Selves struggling for their existence is what I've been explaining here. I got as far as a chemical chain reaction that produces seeds that, if broken open in an environment that contains its food, called reactants, regenerates the chemical chain reaction and with it more chain reaction seeds. Notice that the autogen isn't a molecule. It's a cluster flux of molecules passing through, regenerating the cluster flux it is. The autogen is so minimal that it doesn't even know when to break open. If a seed breaks where there are no reactant molecules around, the free-floating chain reaction molecules just drift away from each other, the end of the line for that autogen lineage. Still, remember my standard. A chemical form, or cluster flux, that regenerates itself is a trying being, a self trying to stay alive. By that standard, a minimal autogen is a trying being. Contrary to our intuitions, it's not some solid object or some imaginable ethereal non-material soul or vital force energy metaphorically breathed into matter by some outside something like a god or higher power. Rather, it's two processes synergistically coupled. It's the first body or somatic dissonance. It's two chemical processes that each lead back to the other. Chain reaction to seed encapsulation to chain reaction. Unlike a two-cycle engine, they're not just limiting what happens, they're limiting what happens such that both processes keep happening. An engine doesn't regenerate the engine it is. An autogen's form regenerates the autogen's form, so long as it has some energy and matter to channel into its regeneration. We've talked about checks and balances. What we mean is balanced checks, if that didn't sound like bookkeeping. What we're talking about is checks in balance with each other. The autocatalytic chain reaction and capsid shell formation processes keep each other in check, preventing each other from ending. What's maintained isn't the material, but the form. Form is always instantiated in matter, but the matter comes and goes, just like the food you eat that passes through you. I offered an intuitive sense of it in the last video. I get to my to-do list by preventing my dithering away at my to-don't list. I have body, heart, and mind dissonance that keeps my checks and balances with each other more or less. I have my impulses and impulse control. Again, like the autogen, I'm a cluster flux form that channels energy into work that regenerates the cluster flux form I am. By retiring the autophobic notion that a self is a solid, static thing like a DNA molecule or an eternal spirit, you recognize how evolution can happen. Being a self-regenerative cluster flux, I remain in existence and accumulate new checks in balance that facilitate my struggle for existence. For example, I can live on different foods. A diet change can change my physical characteristics. That's true for autogens too. For example, different reactants might result in different chain reactions in capsid shells. What if an autogen seed broke open in the presence of a slightly different kind of reactant? As a result, it produced a slightly different autocatalytic chain reaction that generated a slightly different capsid molecule byproduct. Imagine that these slightly different capsid molecule byproducts form shells that reactants stuck to. When reactants stuck to the shell, like barnacles on a boat hull, they create a rough surface on which other molecules are more likely to catch, tearing the seed open. If that happened, the simple autogen would be more likely to open in the presence of reactants. It would have evolved a capacity to distinguish between good and bad environments in which to open, an enhancement of its functional interpretive effort. Functional interpretive effort, really? I mean, you can explain it in strictly physical terms. Reactants stick to molecule shells, making their surfaces rough and therefore more breakable. No, it's functional because it increases the likelihood that the autogen will break open usefully. It's not just one-on-one molecule-on-molecule interaction. It involves the whole cluster flux of transient molecules in the service of regenerating the cluster flux it is. You can think of it as an if-then algorithm. If reactants are present, then break open. If not, stay closed. But be careful. Researchers often talk like trying beings are just elaborate computers with myriad toggle switches programmable to handle symbol manipulation. Like when you click yes instead of no and the computer reliably turns on a dime to another routine. Interpretation isn't like that. It's more like iffy threshold effects. When reactants stick to the side of an autogen seed, it might or might not break open. If it does, it will break open in different ways. Human language oversimplifies how trying beings interpret. I can say that the reactants cause a chain reaction seed to break. I can say a stop sign causes me to stop. It's a convenient way to talk. But interpretation is different. I interpret the stop sign as about traffic. How I stop is varied, not robotic and deterministic. Nor is the outcome deterministic. I could even stop at a stop sign, get rear-ended, and die. Remember, we're talking about changes in likelihoods. It's easy to imagine an autogen that accumulates a few reactants on its surface and breaks open where, ironically, there aren't enough reactants to get a viable autocatalytic chain reaction going. What a fool. It broke open expecting enough reactants to resume the chain reaction and ironically, alas, got the reverse of that. At the top of this video, I said I would share the idea I've taken most to heart from this research. It's irony, or more pointedly and poignantly, dirony, dire irony. We trying beings struggle for our existence, right? Trying is not guaranteed. Yoda says do or not do, there is no try. That's motivational, but bullshit. There is only try. Life is iffy, evolved guesswork. Habits that work most of the time, but not all, sometimes getting us killed. An ironic situation is one in which the outcome is the reverse of what was expected. You stopped at a stop sign to save your life, and you ended up rear-ended and dead. They say comedy is tragedy plus timing, so it's probably both timing and emotional distance. When someone slips on a banana peel and dies, it's either funny or tragic depending on distance. Life is tragic-comic that way. Darwin didn't explain life's struggle for existence, and he knew it. He assumed the struggle for existence and explained speciation. But he did freak the hell out of us autophobic folk. 40% of Americans still deny Darwin. They might say it's because they believe in God or find it repulsive to imagine us descending from apes, but I think it's the inescapable irony of life that eats at them. Darwin exposed that there's no surefire formula, no infallible recipe for living. People like to imagine that there's some algorithm that solves reality once and for all. No more guesswork. I get it. I just don't buy it. I think life is harder than that, and that people make it harder than it has to be by pretending it's simpler than it can be. I'm a devout ironist or fallibilist. I distill fallibilism to this. No matter how confident I am in a try, I must remain still more confident that it is a try, a bet that ironically could go wrong. I can pile on more and more educated refinements to my bets, but they're still bets. I find that liberating, not as comforting as pretending I found the infallible solution to reality, but tolerably realistic in ways that enable me to breathe a little easier whenever my bets go wrong, as they do. I take comfort in knowing that I can bet right and have it come out wrong. I can bet on the 90% likely odds and end up with the 10% odds coming true. I find that liberating for a trying being like me, trying to bet right. I still regret bad outcomes, just not as much. It makes me feel as one with humankind and with trying beings in general, all of us groping in the dark for safety and survival in a scary, ironic world. I've started a whole series ironically titled, Irony is Your Superpower. I bet I'll finish it one of these days. I could have come to my ironist fallibilist philosophy through some abstract, ungrounded philosophizing about the nature of life, but I prefer having gotten there through an explanation for the physical emergence of trying beings. Emphasis on the trying. Hey, thanks for wondering with me. Like, subscribe, comment, and one more. Email me for a free trial half-hour strategic consulting session. Not bottomless psychotherapy or pep talk coaching, but cut to the chase, help navigating your next moves on anything, but especially on getting your mind back from some nagging doubt or some jerk who keeps jerking you around. Thanks.